Hello. I am here today with Ryan Craig, Managing Director of Chief Partners. I've been a longtime fan of Ryan's. I think of Ryan's writing alongside Tony Wan and the Ed Surge gang as sort of the formative uh, experiences of my career in terms of how I think about education and investing in education and just how the world could work versus how it does work, and getting into a lot of the nuances therein. So, Ryan, I'm super excited to have you today. And before we get into the news that y'all have been putting out at a furious pace this year, can you just talk about how you got to where you are today and all the iterations it's that Achieve and before at University Ventures went through, that landed you with this model that is seems to be scaling rapidly?
Well, if we talked about everyone, we'd take the full hour. But so yeah, it wasn't a straight line to get to doing what we're doing. But just as a recap, in our workforce fund today, what we're doing is we focus on sectors of the economy where there's a talent shortage, and then we buy services businesses in those sectors and build apprenticeship programs into those companies so they become talent engines for their talent starved sectors. That does lots of good things for the company, as you might imagine. Allows them to sell and start projects they wouldn't have otherwise been able to sell, launch innovative new managed services, build staff aug functions into their businesses, accelerates revenue, expands margins because we change the shape of the workforce of the companies. They no longer look like this. Now they have a big, broad base of junior talent in them, which tend to be more profitable than mid level or more experienced talent. So, and we've just had a lot of success with that model. Um, the sort of I'd say the formative investment occurred a decade ago when University Ventures, which had been investing in a series of boot camps and faster and cheaper. You can see my book behind me, Faster and Cheaper Alternatives to College. Decided to had like a dip our chocolate in the peanut butter moment, and invested in a staffing company, which we renamed Reviture, and built the boot camp inside a staffing company. And they were staffing software developers, but that was back when people were actually hiring software developers. And it was just a phenomenally successful investment for us. In the third year of our involvement in Reviture, they hired, trained, and deployed over 1,200 new apprentices. And so that was the genesis of our workforce strategy. And if you think about it, staffing is actually a fairly elementary application of that strategy. A more sophisticated application is if you have an underlying services business that's delivering projects or managed services for clients. And we can create a real flywheel effect between the new talent element and the legacy services business. And that's what we've been busy doing across almost now a dozen different sectors in tech services and healthcare services. So that's kind of the story. The great irony is that when I started my investment career at Warburg Pincus, it was 25 years ago now. One reason I ultimately departed is that they weren't sold on education investing the way I was, and they told me that if I wanted to continue investing in education, I would have to join the business services group and spend more than half my time investing in business services companies. And now, our view is that, given the way of the world, the great education and training businesses of the next decade
Converged.
are going to be created out of business services companies. So that's exactly what we're doing in our workforce fund.
If you don't mind, I think, I worked at a boot camp, Fullbridge, back in the day, and, it got some of the battle scars that happened across the industry from that boot camp model. It's sort of funny that I think a lot of people look back on that period, uh, not with particular fondness. I think it was a tough slog for a lot of them. What what was it about Reviture and the deals that you've done since that has worked out better, well enough to justify a $450 million fund that was missing from a lot of those other players in the space.
Well, again, I think the boot camps, I think they do a decent job of addressing the skills gap. They do very little, if anything, to address the experience gap, which is to say, you can become a newly minted Salesforce admin in some sort of boot camp, faster and cheaper program, but not a lot of companies are excited about hiring a newly minted Salesforce admin who's never actually worked as a Salesforce admin before. And so, by vertically integrating it into the staffing company, we're the employer of record. We take the risk, and we're delivering the experience to the apprentices, so that ultimately, when it comes time for the end ultimate employer to make a hiring decision, they're looking at not only a skilled but an experienced candidate, and that's even more obvious when you think of the services businesses in our Workforce Fund One, where most of these apprentices are working on projects. Our companies restructure, rethink how the work can be delivered. So someone who has a very high set of cognitive skills, high durable skills, but limited technical skills and very limited experience can get to work and add value on a project team or through some managed service immediately. And then after a year, they are, experienced and highly valued in the market. I mean, we have dozens of instances of apprentices less than a year from being hired by our companies, going to work for clients and making six figures. So lots of companies just simply don't want to take the risk on inexperienced talent, and we're solving that problem.
That makes sense. And, I would imagine that experience compounds, right? Like at a company, they're building that skill, that company capacity from square one, and y'all are on. I mean, how many deals have you done across Workforce One and Two at this point? A dozen, a little
We've
more.
probably done across, including the relevant deals in university ventures and special purpose vehicles now, probably a dozen.
Yeah. So you're in the compounding phase, whereas everybody else is still starting at square one. And I think like what's sort of interesting to me is trying to guess where how long it'll take the market to follow you. And I guess it's sort of intriguing for you guys to be out ahead of the
Well,
market.
there are
And
lots
that's
of, I think we're the only private equity investor doing this, but there are lots of examples of nonprofits and for profit companies, operating companies, and government programs trying to replicate our model, where they recognize and the growth of apprenticeship broadly is can be attributed to this. Apprenticeship is what we're doing, and it is a silver bullet for the skills and experience gaps, because apprenticeships, by definition, are jobs that don't require prior skills, technical skills, or relevant work experience. So all of our companies, whenever they launch a new cohort of apprentices, we're hiring for cognitive skills, durable skills, but not for technical skills or experience. They get that over the course of the apprenticeship, and there are dozens and dozens of initiatives over the past 5 years that are leveraging the same model. We're the only one looking for services businesses in talent-starved sectors and buying them so we can execute on the strategy.
Yeah, and what's sort of most interesting to me, and this is I had a gaffe earlier this year where I uh, didn't quite frame a deal that you did right, where it's like you're not buying apprenticeship businesses, you're
No.
buying real businesses and adding an apprenticeship element. So can you talk about, at one of the recent deals that leverages that structure, and like how did you identify that was a space that was talent starved? What was it like finding a business therein? And then what is the process for adding in that apprenticeship component?
Sure. I mean, you referenced our $465 million exit to Infosys for a company called Optimum Healthcare
Sure.
IT.
Yeah.
And that was one of the early investments in Workforce Fund One. And what Optimum Healthcare IT was, and I'm sure everyone listening has, experience with this at their doctor, where your health records are now digitized and what's called an electronic health record system. And the market dominant platform is called Epic, which is a privately held company in Madison, Wisconsin. An amazing story that the woman who
Really cool story.
founded that company. But they dominate the market right now. But to become an Epic certified analyst, which are the folks who manage the system, not the folks who use it. Everyone in healthcare uses it, but the folks who actually administer the system, like the Salesforce admin for Epic. And there's a need for hundreds of thousands of them across consultants, but in particular at the hospital systems that run Epic. The pathway to becoming an Epic certified analyst meant you either worked at Epic in Madison, or you worked for PwC or Deloitte, and you happened to be seconded onto an Epic project, and they put you through the training. But of course, PwC and Deloitte would only train for their own needs, right? They wouldn't train for the needs of the tens of thousands that hospitals and healthcare systems have. So Optimum was an Epic partner. They implemented and integrated Epic for hospital systems. And with our involvement, they launched Optimum Healthcare, Optimum Career Path, which was the first apprenticeship program for Epic. We also realized that hospitals had needs in other platforms as well. So we extended what Optimum worked in to Workday for hospitals, ServiceNow for hospitals, Cloud for hospitals. And these were all different curricula paths in the career path program. So we were hiring, training, and deploying hundreds of new career path apprentices a year, and that fueled the growth of Optimum. Ultimately, by the time we exited, revenue had more than tripled, and EBITDA had more than quintupled in our hold period, and Infosys made a compelling offer. So it was a great success for us, and I think that we're trying to rinse and repeat across a number of different sectors where there are talent shortages.
Yeah, and I think one of your recent deals is sort of a bet on that, right? With Solito.
That's right. Yeah. So Solido is a new deal in Workforce 2, our new $450 million fund. And that is in the biotech space. So these are drug development companies, early stage drug development companies, often venture backed. And there's just a lot of technology and, in particular, compliance work that these companies have to do to get drugs ready and approved for market. And most companies don't want to invest in that infrastructure themselves. They want to outsource it to a partner like Solido that does that work. We see a huge talent gap here, not just on the technical side, but on the regulatory compliance side, that is eminently trainable if we can hire and train sort of high ceiling candidates who want a pathway into biotech for that work. And that's exactly what we're doing now with Solido. And we expect to change the shape of that company's workforce and add an army of young apprentices that we can then staff to clients and help propel the growth of the company.
So one of the things that I am particularly intrigued by with your model, and it relates to some of the sort of broader discourse about young people and young people's employment um, around the whole world, right? And we're in this moment where it's like every other day there's an article in the New York Times about youth unemployment and like the grads aren't getting jobs, et cetera. And you know, intriguingly, I've seen both the head of DeepMind and the CEO of AWS come out and say, y'all are nuts. Like, the only thing blocking you from hiring these young people is your imagination. And like there are plenty of things these folks can do with proper training. And I'm curious to hear, like, I think you, of almost anybody in the space, have a front row seat to that. And probably know more about what's happening on the ground and whether or not these folks
Yeah.
are employable or not. So can you just like take a
There's
little
a
time to
lot.
opine on it?
Yeah, there's a lot of debate around AI's impact on the future of work, and in a number of topics you could kind of spin a dial. But one, I think, where there is a great deal of agreement, and that is that it's changing the nature of entry level work, such that the grunt work that used to hire new college grads and new workers to do is going to be done by AI. You're going to expect new workers to do higher value client work, project work, product work from day one. And the rub is that you're not going to be able to do that higher value work without prior work experience. Yes, you can imagine a different role, i.e., a higher value role, but you're also going to be looking for someone with relevant prior in-field work experience to do that work, which in some ways is going to make entry-level job into something of an oxymoron. And so that means two things. One is we need many, many more apprenticeship or apprenticeship-like pathways, like the ones we're building, where by definition, these jobs don't require the prior skills or experience because they get them over the course of the apprenticeship. And usually there's an intermediary like our companies that's doing the heavy lifting of setting up and running the programs, taking the risk, serving as the employer of record for this inexperienced talent. And that's the work that we're doing. That's the work that Apprenticeships for America has been busy doing. We've had a lot of success on the policy side, changing the way we think about and fund apprenticeships. But that's one way. The second way is you better believe that pretty much anytime anyone graduates into a full-time job search from any level, high school, associate's degree, bachelor's degree, graduate or professional degree, they're going to need prior in-field work experience. And so that's going to make, our current system of internships, which are unsystematic, relationship based, and highly inequitable, it's going to shine a spotlight on that. And pretty much any institution that's graduating a student from whatever level is going to need to figure out how to systematically deliver in-field work experience. And so that's led us down the path of expanding our mandate from apprenticeship to internship and launching with a company called Alchemy, the first internship service provider. So what Alchemy is doing is, in the same way that our apprenticeship intermediaries carry the burden for employers, serving as the employer of record of
Hmm.
apprentices, Alchemy is doing that for interns as well. So Alchemy is aggregating demand from interns, aggregating supply of internship opportunities from companies, and matching interns to opportunities, allowing companies to automatically develop an AI-driven plan. So they'll know over the 8 or 12 week internship exactly what interns should be doing every hour of every day. The platform helps manage and supervise the intern work, and critically, Alchemy serves as the employer of record. So the intern never has to touch HR, touch payroll of the company. So we think with that model, it removes the friction for companies and will allow us to help close the internship gap, which is, BHEF did a report a couple of years ago. 8.2 million undergraduates wanted internships, 3.6 million got them, only 2.5 million of them were quality, and the definition of quality included unpaid internships, which we would not call quality. So for every truly quality paid internship, there's probably 4 or 5 who want them, who are not getting them, and that's just simply a function of the same reason why we don't have enough apprenticeships, same reason we don't have enough internships. It's a pain in the ass, frankly, for companies, and we need companies from our space to lighten the load, carry the burden, and do the work.
And it sounds like a lot of that is very human involved, and helping a young person go from A to B, but there's also some software components that
Totally,
get
yeah.
worked in.
It's
And
a services
um
it's a technology-enabled service, in the same way that OPMs were 25 years ago. And well, I honestly think we're calling them ISPs, internship service providers. I think we're pioneering a whole new category here, that just in the same way that schools needed OPMs, 2 decades ago to go online, they're going to need ISPs here to figure out how to deliver in-field work experience to their students. Not, there are, you can count the number of co-op programs in the U.S. on
On
two
one
hands.
hand,
Yeah,
or
so
maybe
it's
two.
it's
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 like
um,
Drexel, Northeastern,
yep,
Waterloo,
yep. No, you Cincinnati,
couple
Rochester Institute of
others.
Technology, Elon, but yeah, no, it's limited. And there's a reason for that, which is, Bank of America is not going to establish co-op program relationships with 1,000 different universities. They're just not. You have a many-to-many problem, and so the speed it screams for an intermediary like Alchemy.
And is Alchemy doing any of the like routing for students of saying like, hey, these are your interests, these are your skills,
Yes.
this is how the okay.
Yep. Yep. They're doing it in
Um,
engineering. Yep.
and are they going to work at all with Future Fit, or is that a totally
Oh, that's
separate?
totally different. That's another investment
Okay,
we just made,
okay.
and it actually goes back a decade to, or more, to my first book, College Disrupted, where I hypothesized on this, what I call the competency marketplace. As usual, that's a terrible, terrible word for it. It's a talent. We now call it a talent marketplace, but it's using now AI as a career mapping tool for job seekers, young people, and folks who need to, are being redeployed in the workforce, where they can upload their resume, assess their skills, ascertain what immediate opportunities are available to them that match their skill set, figure out what's in their zone of proximal development, and direct them to training upskilling programs, and then track them. That's effectively what career fit is. What future fit is. It is they've started life as a overlay into a broken workforce system, and creating essentially state level talent marketplaces that. And I'm on the Los Angeles County Workforce Board, so I see firsthand just how broken the system is. But these are the kinds of the Future Fit platform is valuable for every state that recognizes that their workforce system is not doing the job, particularly in an era where AI is about to dislocate millions more.
I think that's a good place to ask our final question, which is if you project out 5 years, what are some of the things that you expect to look different about? Let's focus on this sort of young talent development portion of the labor marketplace. How are things going to evolve? Are they going to look a lot like the way that you've been training folks? Are there unexpected things we
Now,
should look for?
look, we've invested, for centuries now in our existing post-secondary education system. So that's not going away. The problem is that AI is devaluing classroom-based learning and increasing the value of work-based learning. And so we need to rebalance. So I do think that there will be new pathways, apprenticeship-like pathways that emerge. But obviously, young people still need the cognitive and durable skills that traditional classroom-based learning provides. We just need to balance that out with more work-based learning. And I think the great universities of the next century are going to be those that get this right. They take the lead on figuring out how to reorient or re-architect their institution and programs of study around work-based learning. And they'll probably need to do that with partners because it's hard for an accredited academic institution to do.
I think that's a really good place to end. Thinking about that balance, and I don't know if it's tension, but the push and pull of classroom based
Depends where
skills
you
and work
sit.
based
If you're running a
skills.
university right now, it's definitely tension.
Fair, fair, fair. But it certainly makes sense logically in my head, and um, yeah, I will be watching closely as you and others take on trying to solve for that. And I hope we can do this again in 5 years and talk about what happened.
Well, I hope we talk before then, but
Yes,
yeah, we'll
yes.
we'll do that.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan.
Well, all right. Thanks, Matt. Bye.